What is good, everyone? A-Rock quickly back for Building Wedge Part 9. So we have all of Set 4 spoiled. So I don't think that the most recent set of spoilers necessarily changed much about the core of the deck. A lot of what has changed the core is understanding what cards we need to be playing against, what decks are doing, and how we can best interact with that. And um, a few ways that we've adapted by the KTOD Discord has helped in this in the Wedge aggression thread. So head over there, join their Patreon, get in their Discord, do it, and lots of talks in the Bothan network as well. So make sure you join their Discord. Just join all the SWU Discords. They're such a great resource for understanding and how to build. Um, and a lot of the talk has been about, okay, so we loved Fleet Lieutenant, but I think Leia potentially is better. The 3/4 body is really nice, and the Restore becomes super, super relevant. The extra toughness, big. We're losing out on the attack, but the Restore can really be can start to swing games in our favor and push us in places to where we will gain ourselves one more action, which is all this deck really ever needs. So this allows us to play a 2 of, which opened up some space in the for some other cards, and I'm really liking this in the Thermal Oscillator version. And I'll touch base on the Tarkin Town version here in a moment. But we dropped down to 2 red leaders. I still think that this card is very good in a certain a handful of situations, but that's where I'm at. But the main card that we've added, which I've talked about before in other videos, but it's for a cause I believe in. This card does so much for this deck, and we only need an attack or 2 for this to then become lethal. Um, and in Thermal Oscillator, this card gains insane value because we're able to dig for the second one and maybe even the third to close out games. So if we do go all in the early turns, get one good attack off, we put our opponent into a place where we're just a 4 cause or 2 off the top and the game's over. Which, that's dreaming for 2, but 1 is realistic that we should see it over the course of a game. So very big. Still relying on Rebel Assault and feeling really good. I think Spec Force Soldier and Fang Fighters are probably going up to 3 ofs in the side, so 3 and 3 will probably drop the stay on targets. This is a little bit of testing stuff. I still am high on Timely Reinforcements, and I think it's very good in the mirror. So realistically, a 3-3-2 line, and then we'll have 2 slots open for something, which we will figure out in good time. So yeah, a couple things that we've started to recognize in the early testing is like how bad the Y wings are. So this is why the Tarkin Town version I think has a lot of play, and it's a lot more interactive, and it can play a little bit of a slightly longer game and can have a similar speed to Thermal Oscillator, but I think Thermal Oscillator can get just a little bit under some decks and really push ahead in that way. The Y-Wings, both gray and red Y-Wing, are really bad into command villainy decks. I mean, a super laser technician on turn 2, if they have initiative, they're stoked. They get a free ramp and get to absorb some damage. That's not where we want to be. So these aren't always the cards we want to see. But I do think if you're in the Tarkin Town version, you just take that you take that loss a little bit to make sure that you have your turn 1 ships and you keep pushing. But that's why I'm still very high on the Alliance X-Wing. This is just a valuable ship with the Rebel tag. 2/3. The 3-butt is super important, and yeah, I think another thing that I'm going to be working on is, what ships do we want our pilots in? So expect that probably in part 10, where we talk about, what ships should these guys be going in? Because there are ships that, Biggs maybe isn't that good in a Phoenix Squadron A-Wing because it's a 5/3. If they don't play a ship into space, then maybe. But if they have an A-Wing of their own, don't play Biggs there because you're just losing 2 cards for 1, and that can be pretty brutal. But 9 Numb is amazing at pushing any of the 3 HP ships outside of ping plus Tarkin Town range, so that can be very good for us. Which units do you want to be putting in your Falcon, and recognizing, okay, maybe you're playing a ship even though you have a free pilot on turn one, but you have Chewbacca in hand. Maybe you're waiting to just Chewbacca on turn two to get ahead and blank their waylays, blank their Power of the Dark Sides, Merciless Contest, you name it. So sometimes that starts to become a lot of how we play our games. I do think into certain ECL decks like Poe ECL, Sabine ECL that have a 3 attacking space unit on turn 1 that they can ECL out. It is pretty important to try and find blue leaders or Phoenix Squadron A-Wings in your early turns, because the Phoenix Squadron A-Wings trades. The blue leader is a perfect answer on the second turn to clean up their ambushed unit. So we look for that. We dropped the Fang Fighters to the side, put the red 3s in. I think that this is going a little bit faster and a little more all-in, which helps, and red leader is pretty good. This was a big talking point we had throughout the conversations on the KTOD Discord, and that was big. I am still very high on Bright Hope. Card's insane. We want to see it. But yeah, let's take a look at a couple of the new cards that did drop. There's one in particular that I think is in the side. It's just this. It's 2 cost. Shoot Down. This card is crazy. So I think this is something that we might want to be playing as maybe the other card in our sideboard, just because this is, read the card. It's amazing. Doing 3 damage to a space unit. If it's defeated, 2 to the base. So removal and racing. It's burn. It's really good. We also need to be very aware of this card, because some decks might just be saying, turn 1 ship, kill it, take 2 to your base. They're off to the races running. They went 1 for 1, and now we're kind of tempoed behind. And that will get around any piloting we do. So pretty solid card there. And yeah, that was probably one of the main ones that I saw outside of everything. Maybe that was it. I mean, System Shock, what we've seen. I'm not high on They Hate That Ship. Frisk, I think, is still a potential sideboard card. Yeah. Okay, so another card we need to be very aware of is War Juggernaut. Card's insane. Django did not need extra tools. It did not need IG 2000. It did not need the War Juggernaut, and here you go. They got Devastator, War Juggernaut, IG 2000. Absolutely insane. FFG loves the Fett brothers. Fett dad and son, not brothers, but whatever. Might as well be. Yeah, so I think that's just pretty insane. We did have a contributor, Ryan, who was talking about the tactical heavy bomber as being something we could play with. They Hate That Ship, and letting that man try and figure that out. That's not for me. So yeah. As for the rest of things, I'm feeling very good about what we can be doing. Dogfight, I just don't think is it. Yeah. So back to talking about this versus Tarkin Town. I just don't think the Y-Wing. So let's look them up. I just don't think the Y-Wings are as good as we need them to be. And let me explain a little bit further. They're really good when you can put Biggs, Luke, or Chewie on them. You don't want to be putting R2 or 9 Num on them. You can maybe even go Wedge into these, because now they're able to trade and actually push some damage. But if you can't guarantee that, they are very slow ships. And if they are able to continue to establish a board turn after turn, they just absorb damage, and hitting for 1, 2, or 3 is just, it doesn't help us race like we need to, because if decks are allowed to go bigger than us, we are going to lose. We can go tall faster than any deck in the game right now, I think, and that's just an opinion. But I just think that these sometimes can lead to really slow starts, and leading to on the 4, 5, and 6 resource turn that we're wondering how we stretch out the last few points of damage. And had these been either A-Wings or even the X-Wing, we probably are there. X-Wing being just the weakest just above. Like if I have the option, I'm probably resource the Red Squadron Y-Wing and keep the X-Wing. And just simply based on that I know that this is going to guarantee damage. Now, Red Squadron Y Wing can push more damage if you feel like you're going to be able to. It's more into a control deck. Maybe this is better where they're not going to be pushing too much damage. If it's like a Pershing on the ground, this ends up probably pushing more damage than anything. So there are situations where you want this. So I'm not just calling the Y Wings bad by any means. I think that they are great ships to have access to, but they aren't our best options. Um, yeah, so I think that that's something we really need to be aware of. And I think that there's a level of some aggressive mulligans that we can have that allow us to set up for finding Chewbacca, finding Luke to blank their removal and make it less impactful is very important. And the sheer amount of times I am deploying Wedge in the ground arena and not onto something just to guarantee 3 damage, especially since we're playing for a cause I believe in, you can start to math a lot better here with saying, all right, well, Wedge is a guaranteed 3 in most situations, plus the 4 because we are 100% on hits for 4 cause before, unless we're sideboarded, which we're kind of keeping it to a decent minimum that we won't go too low on our odds. That you can guarantee that 4 cause is going to be at minimum 3 damage in a lot of situations. Maybe 2 if you get absolutely blown out with bringing in some Fang fighters, but um, in a lot of situations, this card is going to do absolute work. And Wedge doesn't always need a ship. Now, there's a few turns that we can talk about. If you go unchecked in a few ways, where you go, you know, turn 1 ship, pilot it. Turn 2 ship, pilot it. And now you're just cooking and you're pushing. The next turn is if for whatever reason you're blessed and have initiative, you go Rebel Assault for a cause I believe in. That's insane levels of damage and can do really well. And just take 1 pilot out of that mix. That's still insane levels of damage, just right then and there. If they're allowed to go on your 4 resource turn and have those 2 cards to burn out your opponent, you are going to set up the point where that 4 cause you play is now digging you for your Leia to play as a action cheat and a body. You're able to flip Wedge and Leia to do 4 damage and restore 1. You're able to dig for the other 4 cause. I'm not reinventing the wheel with talking about 4 cause. If you've been playing this game since set 1, even set 2, you know how good this card is, and I think that Wedge potentially could be one of the best decks to make use of this because of how swingy our turns can be, and all we need to do is find ways to push damage. Now, playing into Cunning decks, playing into Django, playing into these decks that are trying to control our board and try and handle us, this is a card of having damage out of hand because we don't really have anything that can come into play ready unless we were to play Guerrilla Attack Pod, but we don't really have situations where we're going to 6 resources often. So that's a fringe card that I'd consider playing, but it's not there yet. And it could be a sideboard card, but again, that's a future us problem. Having damage out of hand like this is insane. And then we get to dig for more. I highly encourage, unless one of those 4 cards and you're going to get initiative, or you can make it to where your opponent has to take initiative to find an answer for what you put on top of the deck, throw them in the bin, dig for the next 4 cause. That is really simple. So don't necessarily keep ships unless you have to, and try and set up situations where this card can absolutely win the game. So Wedge is still cooking. This is part 9. Part 10, we'll do a little bit more of the pilot talk, of the math, and talking about which which ones we really want to be piloting almost more often. And sometimes that might mean not piloting on turn one, guaranteeing 1, 2 to 3 damage on the rip with initiative to then go into your Falcon or into your blue leader or something like that, or your red 3. Who knows? We'll talk about it more as we go forward. Wedge is still cooking. Loving what set 4 is bringing. Let me know in the comments down below what deck you're trying to play in set 4 because I am all in on Wedge and loving it. So, yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Have a great one. May the force be with you. Stay awesome.